welcome to lecture number 7 in the first IHF Children's Handball Symposium. My name is Courtney Gahan. I am a part of the IHF media team and I am your moderator for today's session. For those joining us for the first time, I will briefly outline the translation options we have available. We have French, Spanish and Arabic available for today's lecture if you are joining us on Zoom. You can find these at the bottom of your screen by clicking the globe icon marked interpretation. If you are watching on Facebook right now, one of our team is going to share the link to this Zoom webinar in the comments, so you can join us on Zoom if you have an account and if you would like to use the translation option. This first IHF Children's Handball Symposium is part of the IHF Virtual Academy, introduced last year to facilitate global online learning and licensing. All of this is part of the IHF Education Centre, available at ihfeducation.ihf.info. This first IHF Children's Handball Symposium features a total of 8 lectures presented by top children's handball experts from around the world. Today's lecture, Teaching Handball in the Real World, is presented by Mr. Craig Rote. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the lecture and we will address as many as we can at the end of the lecture. And please also note this is being recorded so you can access it later for on-demand viewing. So Craig, welcome.
Hi everyone, just give me a second to tidy up my space. All right, are we all set here, Courtney?
Looks beautiful.
Okay, just want to make sure we are all in the right place. I want to wish everyone a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening wherever you are at this time of day. I am Craig Rote, and I am an IHF lecturer and Handball at School working group member. Today, we are going to have an honest discussion about teaching handball in the real world. In many ways, I'm the perfect expert to deliver this message because I really understand what most of you go through on a daily basis. I want to encourage you to keep going and hope you will take away from this lecture solutions to the problems you face. We are blessed today to receive this warm message of support from Albertina Cosimo, line player for the Angolan national team. I truly believe this message is for you and hope you can enjoy it as much as I do.
Guys, my name is Albertina Cosimo. I am pivot and I am from Angola. I started to play handball when I was 10 years old. I never practiced any other sport before. I wanted, but I never tried. And I started to play handball under the influence of my late father. For all the children that are now starting to play handball, I want to leave one message. Don't give up. I know it's hard, I know it's difficult, especially in this phase of pandemic, because you cannot be with the other children, play handball, having fun, be together, but it's only a phase. Better days will come and we will be able to be together again, as we wish, without restrictions. Meanwhile, you can also have fun. You can practice at home, you can make video call with your friends and have some fun.
I think that is the perfect send-off for our adventure today. Thanks, Albertina. And we will see her again at the end as she presents a drill for our children. Today, we are going to address the realities we face in our daily work by applying many of the practical exercises and games we've already learned to the common problems we all share. But first, we are going to take a deeper look at the Handball at School program and see how it was designed with these problems already in mind. Then we are going to lay out the key issues we encounter and take a fun quiz to see whose worlds are realer than the rest. With these problems in mind, we will turn our focus to practical solutions before we sidestep into a short discussion on the pandemic and why being adaptable and having fun just might be the cure we are all looking for. Let's get started. This is our mantra today. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. It was spoken by one of the greatest coaches of all time for any sport, John Wooden. He is an American basketball icon. We will return to it time and again throughout this lecture, so take a moment to remember it as we move on with our work. which begins with a closer look at our program. This program was not created in a vacuum. It was created by experts who, like my colleagues, have worked all around the world to grow the sport in some of the least developed handball locales on earth, or who, like me, emerged from one. Our program understands this reality, which is why we created a program that is ready to go out of the box, so to speak. No matter the size of your gym or class, or your lack of resources, taking away the uncertainty of teaching a sport you do not know to kids who have likely never heard of it, always focused on transferring what you know about other sports and activities so you can start playing handball now. Our program is not a fixed starting point, but instead a variable point of entry for all schools, clubs, and nation. Level in our program is the primary factor, and age is the secondary factor. Our teaching model ensures that everyone's needs are met, whether they have none, some, or much exposure to the sport. Our program is not rigid, but instead a flexible program that adapts to your needs and limitations. We understand your equipment room might be half stocked or maybe even completely empty. We get you started and let you worry about handball specific equipment later. We allow you to be creative and innovative, which is one of my favorite parts of introducing this program to schools, because we teach you to modify teaching tasks and game forms as needed. The most important thing for us is that you start playing handball now. We also understand that you are new to the sport and have many questions about almost everything. With Handball at School, there is no guesswork involved. We provide a clear and concise overview of the real work of teaching handball. So there's no delay in getting started. Our program focuses on the key aspects of the development process while taking into account that individual groups like yours are unique and require their own special care. We have everything you need from novice to advanced, from young children to adolescents. All you need to do is follow the link below if you are in Zoom, or the link beside if you are on Facebook Live, and you can download our booklet in one of 5 languages. This is our work, but also our gift to you. We hope you enjoy it. We hope you enjoy using it as much as we enjoyed making it. Because we provide the tools like our book and support like this symposium, there's no dependence to our program or plan. Yes, it will be hard work, but it will be worthy work too. And we want you to be independent and use some of the tools you already possess as you set out on your handball journey. Developing as a teacher or coach, being creative and innovative, assuming control as you see fit. We know this is the key to your success. The utility principle is our guiding principle. We give you absolute freedom to shape the rules, the gameplay, and the spaces where you work. If these changes are useful or necessary, think about that. If these changes are useful or necessary, this is our gift to you, the freedom to say that something won't work, not for you, because of this or that, but to also say that I think this will work. Problem solving, creativity, and innovation are the hallmarks of inspired play, and they are the hallmarks of inspired teaching and coaching too. Now that we have a better understanding of our program, let us take a closer look at some of the realities we share. In each of our lectures so far, we have asked questions about the material, but for the sake of my lecture, we are going to take a personal inventory and see how we stack up against each other when it comes to issues. In this section, I will explore common problems found in 5 key areas: desire, knowledge, facilities, equipment, and desire. Each problem is worth 1 point, and there are 25 total. When I am done with this section, you will be instructed to enter your name, country of origin, your score, and the area that is your most problematic. I am keeping score too, so I look forward to seeing whose world is realer than mine. At the base of all human endeavors is desire, and that is especially true amongst teachers and coaches, especially those who are teaching an unknown sport, which can be so difficult. Whether you are directed to teach or coached by your administration or working in complete isolation void of support or guidance, something that I know a little too much about, we have to understand that both are impediments to our desire to teach and coach, as are being met with resistance and running a program that focuses elsewhere. All of these common problems have resolutions, but for now, just keep track of your score as we move on to knowledge, which can often be the reason we quit or fall short of our goals. Especially if we are new to teaching or coaching team sports, or like me some time ago, completely new to teaching and coaching handball. Sometimes we prefer long established methods like the drill-based approach, or think we know everything there is to know about the sport. Yes, this too can be a problem. And most of the times we are just too busy to put in the time to learn a new sport. Consider this last one a free point, as I think most of us can relate to this problem. However, they only get more real from here, because there are few amongst us who do not have an issue with their facilities. The first usually being that they do not have a traditional handball court, sometimes we have too much space for our programs. This is common in the beginning, or we have not enough space for all the children we teach or coach. Sometimes we do not have enough help managing the space, or we just have too much of everything for our own good. Yes, these are problems, and they will be central to our later discussions. For now, just keep track of your score, and I will move on to the next. My favorite part of helping teachers and coaches embrace the sport is stepping into their equipment rooms and closets to see what fun toys they have. It's a magical moment for me. Sometimes, however, they do not have any or not nearly enough. Always, they don't have handball equipment, and often no budget to purchase any, not before more pressing needs. None have handball goals, this is for certain, and for the sake of our quiz, you should give me this point back because children's handball requires different goals. Typical is the dilemma of too many students for too little equipment. All of these problems are easily fixed with a little ingenuity, some problem solving, and a whole lot of creativity. The one fixed area is typically students. Most are disinterested in learning a new sport, especially if they are approaching adolescence. Some lack the coordination and familiarity with the ball to start playing now. A huge issue for me in the beginning was the vast mix of skill levels, and I've often seen teachers struggle with programming because different classes have different levels from hour to hour. For me, especially as a coach, was the fact that we had no one else in town to play. Nevertheless, issues with students and players are not easily fixed, but should always be close to mind when planning your lessons or practices. So how did you do? Don't forget to enter your name, country of origin, score, and most pressing problem now. Looking back at my start, my score would have been a 14. My most pressing problem then were mixed groups. How I kept both groups playing, beginning and advanced, for as long as I did, I will never know. The sad reality is that today, despite all of that I have achieved, I still have a frustrating 8 or 9 for a score. Today's most pressing problem is the resistance, and knowing you face it as well keeps me going in my work. So enter your score and we'll move on to solving your problems. Let's dig in. Sometimes a simple change of view or perspective can, if we look deeply enough, provide answers that were not readily apparent before. Most problems with desire stem from a misunderstanding that things should be easy, or that we should not be told to do something, that we are all alone, or that we shouldn't face resistance. But these aspects of teaching or coaching are logical and intuitive, because nothing worth doing is easy, and sometimes having to do something is the best way of doing something well. And while lonely at times, being an innovator can be a thrilling time, as can working through strong resistance and succeeding despite it. By looking at this differently, by looking differently at ourselves and our work, we can now see opportunity instead of obstacle. Make a small adjustment. Improving our programs for children will also improve ourselves and our work. I want you to consider these 11 transformational coaching behaviors as presented by the Canadian researcher Jean Coté, and focus deeply on 4 in particular, which I feel can improve our classes and practices, especially with children. By focusing on expressing confidence, providing meaningful and challenging tasks and roles, emphasizing the learning process, and recognizing accomplishments, we can greatly improve the quality of our work and transform the lives of the children we serve. Sometimes desire requires deliberate acts to spark the fire. And now let's turn to celebrate an organization that's doing the real work of building a strong organization. As I do with each of my lectures, I like to celebrate programs and organizations doing great things. For the last 15 years, Game On Sports for Girls has been providing award-winning all-day sports camps for girls with the philosophy that playing hard, having fun, trying new things, making friends, and learning leadership skills are essential aspects of their lives. Without doubt, they are one of my favorite partners, as they have served thousands of girls in the Chicago area and beyond. Handball is but one of the many sports these girls play and is not even close to their focus. But I share a core belief with Game On's founder, Barb Lazarus, and her business partner, Sarah Hogan, that youth sports are transformational and teach children valuable lessons about life. Which is why I am always impressed by their teaching model. Introduce young kids to new sports and activities. Don't burden them with long-winded talks about techniques and tactics unless it is absolutely necessary, and instead just let them play. The practices are 25 minutes tops, nothing more than a short area of focus, something small like, hey, maybe today we celebrate every time someone scores. And is it too much to ask for you not to run around with the goal area discs? The girls are receptive, courageous, and often competitive, but I think their model has figured out where other youth sports have gone wrong. In the end, kids just want to be with friends and have fun, and we should never forget that. They have camps for girls as young as 5 and as old as 12. And here you can see the older girls on their second or third day of practice. I try not to stop them from playing, only if safety is compromised. You can see that steps are an issue, as is the arm form, but they are having fun, and that's what matters most. Those things will come, as they did, quite soon. But again, here's a program that is not even about handball, providing great handball programming for young girls. I think we can learn a lot from them. I know I have, and so can you. All of the problems with knowledge can be resolved with a little sweat equity. Putting time into yourself by learning our program and seeking out training and certification to keep yourself up to speed. Our booklet is meant to be read in a day or two and designed to be used right away. With a keen eye on detail, our graphics lay out the most problemsome details of development in sharp focus. Follow the link below or beside to download a free copy in one of 5 languages and get started playing handball now. Which brings us to our third area of focus, facilities. If this is yours, I cannot help you. I am sorry. But for everyone else, I think I can offer a world of help as we turn our focus from who we are and what we know to what we have, in most cases, what we don't. And then in the next section, we will apply some of the games and exercises we've already been presented to problems we all share. This all begins by first understanding what our students and players need, and then building a space for them where they can thrive. This process starts by creating a teaching or coaching alley and includes a clear division of your workspace into manageable areas. That is an important part. The size and number of these areas should be fixed, but their rules should be flexible, controlling the flow to and from them depending on the needs of the class or team. Finally, these areas should be easily converted into game spaces where children can get to really play. That is important. My colleague, Dr. Petronayevich, said the magic time, and it really is. A simple alley of space allows the teacher or coach to control the lesson or practice. Of no lesser importance, the alley also provides a buffer of safety between the rows, giving teachers equal access to all games. The most useful aspect of the teacher alley is the ability to correct or freeze the action in one area without hindering the action of all players and areas. Special considerations should be taken in the following unique circumstances. When teaching or coaching young children, as you can see here in the video, it is important to model the correct technical actions or tactical behaviors. And you can see here my colleague, Dr. Hapkova, working in and out of the students. Her placement amongst them, as the video catches up, her placement amongst them is important as it works to maintain a semblance of order. Despite the threat of chaos breaking out at any moment, the kids look to her and each other to regulate their behavior and mimic her actions. From a practical standpoint, these sorts of generalized games and drills are essential for the development of small children and should be added to your programs. I'm just going to let this play a second for you to see. I love these games. They're always on the edge of chaos, always in some semblance of control. You can see here my colleague working well with the kids, showing the behavior. They look to her. If you're standing on the side in an alley, they can't see you. They can't interact with you. It's really important at this age. As players get older, it's not as important. In this example, taken from Dr. Laseria's lecture on interactive games and drills, we can see a teacher with a small group and a large space. The space is large enough for him to move freely about and to interact as he sees fit. For many of us, this is a luxury we do not enjoy. He seems, from the video, to be giving clear instructions and consistent recommendations. However, this class does not reflect the realities that many of us face. As a game, I like these games. I like having kids in tag games. We'll talk more about this, but that involve catching, evading, and passing. Here you can see how hard it can be and why a teaching alley is important. Here I'm using a grid of 14 courts consisting of using a grid of 14 courts consisting of games of 5v5 and 6v6 for 150 kids. Here you can see the clear teaching alley for all the staff, which I split into 3 to adequately oversee the games. Here you can see that the age of the children, roughly 11 to 13, allows them to self-regulate. But like most middle schoolers, they are always one breath away from chaos. Organizing classes this size is very difficult, especially amongst this age group, and pose daily issues of lesson planning. But with consistency, clear direction, and a little luck, you can do it too. Here you can see diagrams of the teaching alleys required for different situations. For small size classes with novice players, it is important to be amongst kids and move freely about them. For medium-sized classes with beginners, I would focus on maintaining a decent-sized teaching alley between 2 smaller courts. This way, you can teach from the alley or step into the action, which can be beneficial for younger children and beginners. Again, for large-sized classes with mixed ages or levels, the teaching alley should be prominent and have access to all areas. Sometimes the threat of oversight is all that is needed to maintain order. Divisions should remain consistent throughout a unit. This saves time and effort explaining each time so you can focus on what matters most, the lesson or practice plan. The number of students or players determines the number of spaces required. The age and level of the students or players determines the size of the spaces. It should be understood that for games and exercises, younger children require fewer teammates and opponents and more space to move in order to properly develop. As children grow older, the space they require for tactical games and basic game forms should increase with each level, even if their ability to work in tighter spaces improves. The first objective in handball is to find open space, and it's hard to learn if there is none to have. The final frontier for handball development is to create space where there is none. The areas need to have some space enough for warm-up games, like partner tag or its countless variations, like this one from Dr. Laseria, which focuses on collaborative passing and chasing and evading, which are central games that children love, which is important, understanding how to harness a child's desire to play and use it throughout development. In our upcoming book on games, I'm certain there will be more and many like this one. Areas also require enough space for technical and tactical games. Here you can see from Dr. Souza Gonzalez's work that the space is appropriate for the age. But how do we maintain it with large classes or small facilities? These are excellent drills for novice and beginner, working to develop the skills required for 3 of the 4 main game problems, which are maintaining possession of the ball, making forward progression, and regaining the ball. The more game problems we include in our games and exercises, the more our players will enjoy the game, and the better they will develop. And here you can see my colleague, Dr. Hapkova, using space expertly for a game of Joker handball, where the player in green is always with the attacking team and the attack is never ending. Small-sided games focus on tactical aspects of handball and are used to develop techniques under consistent pressure. The space here is perfect for the age, not too small, where no outcome can be decided, and not too large, where the game becomes overburdened by lengthy transitions. Again, these players are intermediate level and are learning to solve the problem of creating space where none exists. Small-sided games are the perfect tool for developing these skills. The screen always this is an important screen because I want you to be able to see what we can do. Here you can see 3 examples for different size classes and 1 for mixed level classes. I've taught and coached them all, and I can tell you that as long as you stick to your plan and correct your mistakes, which will be many, you can do it too. And you can see in the slide, the first slide with the class of 36, that's a very good ratio of total players to amount of activity. You have 6 in each area, 3 on each team, and you're able to have as many touches as possible. I mean, we're always trying to increase our touches. In the second screen, it becomes more difficult, and I wouldn't recommend that for any small children or lower level groups. It works well with kids in the 10 to 12 range as they begin to self-regulate and control their ability to move between. But it's a class with 60 students is difficult. And then there's the class with the mixed ages and levels. I see this all the time where you have either developmentally immature players, like Dr. Petronevich said, they could have a 3 to 5 year span difference between same age kids. That's how do you construct a classroom situation where everyone gets what they need? You know, and then in other cases you have kids that they're hit puberty at 12 and look like grown men and women, and that's a key factor for how to in influencing how you separate your space, because it's not fair to either group, the delayed maturity or the premature maturity groups to have to play against each other. And that goes back to my original problem, which was the mixed levels. It's a very complex and difficult situation that you have to face and deal with every day. With the overall structure in place, you are now free to do what you need within it. The possibilities are vast, only limited by the group dynamics and the lesson plan. Each of the areas can be universal, or they can vary depending on your needs. A short explanation can be made at the beginning of each lesson, but you should not be limited in your flexibility within the areas. Again, the utility principle should be in full bloom in this discussion. I love using areas for relay races and technical drills, like this relay race, which was part of Dr. Petronevich's lecture on scoring the first goal. Here you can see one of several variations of relay races, which are great for novice and beginner levels, but also for older players, as long as the objects of the game are challenging and age appropriate. The competition for the kids is great, and that's why versus technical drills, which tend to focus on single actions, here we're incorporating them within a competitive mindset, and kids love this. I mean, kids love relay races. But remember, if you go to our book, you should always increase the number of races and shorten the lines at all costs. Here, Dr. Petronevich gives a progressive shooting lesson, which includes modeling, interactive exercises, and several variations. It would be impossible to provide this lesson to a large class, where too few players would be involved and quality repetitions would be lacking. By designating an area within the facility a teaching station and rotating the class through, we can provide larger groups with individualized care without suffering from boredom and inactivity, allowing children to pursue other self-directed activities. A diversity of activities is important for player development, and you should not be limited in your approach. See the hands-on nature of his work, establishing the correct position by holding it there briefly, momentarily for the players. These are great to have, but you can't do it with large groups. It's impossible. And then you lose out on everyone else while you're focused on a single child. But if each of those groups, imagine the class with 36, if each of the 6 come through and you spend 5 minutes in a session where you're working on these progressive drills, it's a value to your program. But if you try to force a class of 36 to stand in line, there isn't enough activity to develop anyone. Again, here he is, focused on controlling the players, showing them the correct position, and it keeps moving. It's very good work that he does. That brief pause locks it in and teaches them. Larger and more complex games, like this small-sided game of Gates Handball, offered by Dr. Laseria, are perfect for a station in a rotation. Here you can see ingenuity at work with the creative use of equipment and furniture to simulate the gates. We will give this teacher bonus points for this example. This game is also a great game for 2 or 3 teams, or even 4 teams, where 2 balls are contended over and each team defends a home gate. We must be flexible in our work and adaptive to our circumstances. Here are some sample designs which you can use. The first is a mixed lesson with stations, and you can see the teaching area in 1, and the Gates Handball game across areas 3 and 4. In the 5th section, you can see the setup for Joker Handball, all of which we have seen videos of. In the second design, you can see that the group will play the same game, possibly 10 passes, but each area will have its own rules, where some must perform jump passes and others have no restrictions at all. The final design shows how rules can also be assigned for full court games, where one forbids dribbling, another prescribes a single dribble, and the final allows players to play without restrictions. This we will return to in a different part of our presentation. But for now, I want you to understand the key for you is to provide variations and restrictions that provoke developmental opportunities for your students. As important as the rules that govern areas are the directions for how groups move in and out of them. This flow can be designed to identify the best groups or players, or to ensure that the best groups or players play each other. Controlling the flow through areas can be illustrative of high needs groups, giving you a clear opportunity to provide instruction and correction. It is very important for all players to have the opportunity to play, and a careful consideration of team makeup and opponent matching will ensure that all players' needs are met. Here you can see a complex lesson plan that includes small-sided games, right there in the middle, technical drills besides it, basic game forms, and technical and tactical games. This is a smart use of the available space and a creative plan for engaging and provoking activities. Watch as we scan back and forth and imagine how you will develop your facility or space. You can see in the distance 2 kids throwing a ball through a hula hoop. There you have a technical game. Beside them are a group playing Capture the Vest, which is tucked into their back pockets. Then you have a basic game form, then you have technical drills, and then you have small-sided games, which are fun and engaging for the players. The flow for complex small-sided games is important. Here you can see we have a game that involves defending space, controlling opponents, making cutting moves, goal for goal moves. Here you have a pass to the player in the inside circle. Mismatch opponents for some games ruins the experience for all players. Great care needs to be made in selecting teams and opponents in order to provide a challenging opportunity. In some models, mixing teams of different skill levels is the answer to this problem. But in many cases, the players from lower levels do not have the opportunity to compete and often go unnoticed. In other models, segregating groups by like levels is the answer to this problem, providing challenging competition for all groups involved. It is up to you to choose the right decision for you and make it work for your students by controlling their movements between tasks. The pattern for station games, especially for young children, needs constant oversight and guidance, especially for children this age. Here you can see from Dr. Greco's lecture on coordination training, a very fun and engaging course, which is well run and contains all the elements of complete development, especially for this age, where exploration is most important. Again, the diversity of tasks and challenges is perfectly suited for this age group. The free play quality of the task allows children to engage the activities at their own speed and level. I really enjoy setting up my classrooms this way, especially for children in the 5 to 7 category, because you can really use all equipment available to you. Here we have hula hoops. Here we have, you don't even need, I don't usually have available to me in class for small children, speed ladders. So I usually tape a design on the floor for them. Something we'll come back to in the pandemic challenge. Here you can see we're shooting, we're dribbling, we're running, we're coordinating footwork. We're doing basic coordination like a somersault in the distance, to standing up to turn and catch a ball. You're only limited by your creativity and your ingenuity. You have to start seeing that all of these activities can be thought out of and they can be used from your other experiences. I think this is what's so important, is that our other sports and our other activities give us a solid base for being able to coach handball, because it's a dynamic sport and has similarities to most sports, especially the invasion game sports. Patterns and flows should be standard. In the first, a simple clockwise pattern is the easiest for children to remember. For large groups, you can have one group move clockwise and the other move counterclockwise, as long as there are distinguishing factors, like kids with the vests on. You give half the kids vests and they move one way. The other group, just in their normal outfits, moves the other way, to ensure unique competition in each rotation. In the second, you can see the rule of the court pattern, where the winners of each game move toward the first court and are the solid arrows, and the losers move toward the last and are the dashed arrows. This is a great pattern for lessons that end with small-sided games. In the last example, we can see that 2 competing rows are relegated and demoted, which means you finish the lesson with the best groups in the same court. This is a great pattern for transitioning to basic game forms. The object of program design is to easily convert to full court activities and basic game forms. This is especially true of large classes. To do so, you will need a short break to clean the space, remove equipment if needed, and mark the goal areas also if needed. Sometimes putting down tape beforehand for a unit is the best answer that you can easily pull up if lines aren't painted. The size of the goal area is relative to the size of the goal, and of course to the age of the players and the size of the teams. If needed, the rules of the games can vary between courts, as previously shown, to improve focus on technical and tactical aspects of development, and to make for a more enjoyable experience. To be successful in your work, it is important to let children play the game form appropriate for them. Here you can see a simple technical 2v1 plus goalkeeper drill, which we first saw in Dr. Taha's lecture. We will break down this tactical drill further in a later slide, but for now, let's watch how the size of the space and the goals are perfectly matched for the age and the level of the players. As players advance in our program, and do so by mastering the level appropriate game problems with newly acquired skills, it is important to provide them with more complexity and difficulty. And I work drills like this with all of my teams, no matter the age, in order to improve their play. A second level of defense can be a useful subsequent progression and something that attaches itself to the next game form for kids. Here you can see the usefulness of the space and see in the distance the teams waiting to rotate into the games. In this game, my players are playing a modified basic game form, being allowed to only use their step sequences in a single dribble to advance the ball. The goals are small, nothing more than soccer pop-ups, and I have made the goal areas equally so, ensuring that the goalkeepers are using primarily their feet. Another suitable opportunity for player development that is the creative result of a lack of proper resources. In almost all instances, we have to create a program with what we have. And this is a great example of it. We have a lot of kids and we have a lot of designated space, but not a lot of equipment. And I had to use my creativity to make it work. But we're going to go into that in a later slide as I further discuss this program and how it could help you. And most important, as I previously stated, we need space for standard basic game forms and the opportunity for children to play and compete, testing the skills they've learned in solving the 4 basic game problems. Here you can see the teams are in the second level of development, solving the problems provoked by a full court pressuring defense. From this basic game form, they will move on to solving a mixed line defense, and then the more familiar and traditional styles. For children, as Dr. Hapkova explained, it is important for them to learn to play in a technique-rich, transitional-based game form. And this is one of my favorite videos, and I use it in almost all of my lectures because I really see and understand the joy of the game here. You can see it from the players' expressions and the kids anxiously waiting to get on the court next, that playing for them is what it's all about. And if we deny the kids this moment and only do technical drills and drill-based approach, we deny them the fun that is the game. I fully understand that it's the most complicated aspect you have to work into the coaching or into the facilities part and managing it. But it is the most worthwhile because it'll provide the biggest dividend for you, because children who fall in love with handball play it for their lives. You know, handball is not like American football where when you're 18, you're done. This is a sport you play deep into your life. And it's important that we allow kids to play so they can carry that love and passion with them as they move on. Here I've taken some time to break down a progressive exercise to illustrate. Let me start these. I want these to run. I just want you to watch. You don't have to focus on the videos that are playing, but I want you to watch how this works to illustrate the development process. In the first frame, we see a simple drill, 1v1 with supporter. This is like the basic initiation to supporting play. We're learning cutting moves and goal for goal actions is key, as is defensive positioning, footwork, and concentration. In the second drill, we shift to collaborative play, what Dr. Lasaria would call interactive play. Here you can see the children solving the problems with spacing, with cutting moves, or with positioning and dissuasion. And that's an important term, something they naturally are instinctive of, but don't know it, dissuasion, which means to stop someone from passing somewhere by standing between them. A third drill or game could be conceived from these, as you can see in the third slide, which would allow for an exciting counter-attack game and would make proper use of a clear rotation. I want you to look at this last slide and consider the rotation that I've provided here. You can see that, I'm gonna try to do, hold on. You can see that the very first player steps in as goalkeeper. After your goalkeeper, you move into counterattack. You know, we're just inventing as we go here, working together. The person who went from goalkeeper to counterattack goes to stand in the attack line. The other attacker who came out of the attack line on the other side comes down and becomes the defensive player right away and works their way back. Then goes to the goalkeeper line on this side to complete the full rotation. You can see that this use of space and control is for an intermediate and advanced players. because we've added fast break and retreat. The rotation goes goalkeeper, fast break, attack line, attack, defense, goalkeeper line, goalkeeper. It adds complexity and intensity by creating this game-like atmosphere, and it relies on the utility principle to be creative and useful with some shifting of players. And so I really want us to focus that we can create these games. And you can see how I've laid out the courts here, that here's an example of something we could do within the space in our facilities, where if we have 3 spaces, like in my previous design for mini handball games, you could have full court tactical drills in 2 and a full court tactical game in the 3rd, and then rotate players through each over a 5 to 8 minute span. And then all players are involved, first learning in one. It's not ideal. In normal progressive exercises, you introduce the first, and then they go through the whole phase and become towards mastery, and then you introduce the second and you move to the third. But sometimes in the real world, we face issues and we have to have involvement, and sometimes we can introduce players to new concepts at the same time as they're working to develop the previous level. And so here's an example of how you can use your court space creatively to have a solid lesson plan. To review, here are the 6 key considerations for you when developing and planning your practices or lessons. Enjoyment of tasks. Are they fun? Safety. Can kids get hurt? Effectiveness. Does it do what it is supposed to do? Appropriateness. Is the right task for this group right now? Ability to teach. Will they learn what they are supposed to learn? And finally, organization. Is it possible to do this with what I have? All the same time, never forgetting age, skill level, size of class, staff or lack thereof, equipment or lack thereof, space or lack thereof. It's really important to take this inventory of your situation to understand what you can do despite it, because our program is meant for that. Our program is meant for you to start playing and not to restrict yourself or feel obstacles or walls. We try to set a low threshold for you so that you can step right in and over anything you face. Which comes to a discussion on some videos that you've seen. And here is like a little case study for you of one of the more complex issues I've ever faced in creating a program. I was tasked with creating a multi-class PE experience for more than 1,000 kids, ranging in ages from 10 to 14, over 8 45-minute class periods each day, with mixed grades, sometimes ranging from 75 to 250 kids. And this is a key point. That drill you saw of the 150 kids playing 10 passes during the teaching alley aspect of this lecture, well, there was another 75 kids in the gymnasium playing, and there was another 25 kids on the grass playing, all in different aspects. At best, I had 3 to 10 teachers available during each period. I had to create Monday, Wednesday, Friday sport days, and Tuesday, Thursday fitness days. I had 3 available surfaces: court, asphalt, and grass, 2 of which are outdoors and needed backup plans for inclement weather periods or even days. No handball equipment besides soft trainers. A 4-week program with all of these constraints and all of these aspects involved. It's hard. It's hard, but it was fun too. And let me show you why. Because we created 2 primary but interrelated concepts: 3 days a week of sport training and 2 days a week of fitness development. The fitness development was handball related and intertwined with the lesson plans on the other surfaces. The 3 surfaces had their own rules and remained consistent throughout. In the same way I split the court into 3 sections, I split the areas into 3 sections. With when you were playing indoors, it was traditional play. normal restrictions apply. When you were outside on the grass, it was no dribble play, and inside was single dribble play. The three differences were similar to my modified game forms concepts, but they were focused elsewhere. When you were on the grass, you were focused on technical skills around passing and catching. When you're on the asphalt, you were working on footwork and dribbling. These are important aspects of our program, and implementing them in different situations is what we all face and have to answer the questions. I divided the course into 4 sections, with each surface having its own curriculum, which was flexible enough to be independent of the others, as the rotation differs for each group. Fitness was done together and therefore was the one control of this experiment. You can see here that each week was an area of focus, which shaped all the lesson plans. While not easy, it certainly was fun and challenging to create this program. Beyond facilities, equipment problems take creativity. And remember, you can make it if you don't have it. You can use alternatives if you don't have it. You can run fundraisers to acquire it. You can stop stressing about handball goals right now, since children require smaller ones. You don't even need goals. All you need is a target for them to shoot at. And if you don't have a target for them to shoot at, like cones, you can put some sort of broomstick up or some object for them to throw at as the point. When I don't have goalkeepers, I play post and in goal. Sometimes with smaller groups that don't have goalkeepers and are at the age where kids are choosing to play goalkeeper. And never forget to design your lesson plans around what you have, never what you want. And here's the final part of our problems. For your students, it is important to remember that if you build a great program, the kids will come and play. If they aren't ready, start with the basics, like we saw in Dr. Greco's presentation. Make sure everyone is challenged and focus on each class's needs. Create more competition, like festivals and tournaments. And if you don't have any in your age group, like me, still, then your youth teams will have to play adults, like pictured, and shape the rules for player enjoyment and safety. I took my high schoolers to Canada and took silver in the Canadian National Championships for youth several years ago. For many of my players, it was their first tournament ever playing in. I take my kids to Sweden when I can, to the Partille Cup, which is an amazing opportunity for kids to truly see how magical the sport can be. I created in my own hometown a series called the Windy City Series. And 12 weekends over 2 years, I invited teams of college students and adult clubs to come play for free in my facility. I knew this was a valuable opportunity for my players' development, and I couldn't miss it. In this picture, you can see my players. Look at number 12 out there playing against adults. He's probably 14 or 15 at that time. He's now a man and going off to college. But back then, I had to create the opportunity for him to play. And I did so by shaping the rules. So we were under rules about what the level of defensive play would be for the adults, so that the younger players could work on themselves. And the only price it cost me was the rental of the facility space. I did this 12 times. I gave over a 2-year period more than 46 games of valuable game experience to my players, simply by being creative and thinking through the problem and making it work. It's always the problem with starting new programs, is having age group competition. The only other age group in my country that plays at the same level or a similar level is in San Francisco. And it's really hard to coordinate taking 20 high schoolers across country. I know I do it for international competitions all the time, and it's frustrating. But I think for you and for your purposes, expanding your program and welcoming new players is in, because the first threshold is getting to about that 20 number, where you can start playing self games against each other and split. 25 becomes a magical point, because now you can have a rotation of players and have more competition. but you're going to have to be creative in how you find and build competition into their development plan. And for teachers, you have it built in the classes, but after school, it becomes a completely different situation. And now we turn to our final part of this program, which is just some advice for a pandemic. We basically have not been talking about the pandemic throughout this lecture series because we want people to be forward thinking and excited about the future. But here, let's talk briefly about what we can do and why it's important. Children need to remain active and healthy. This is so important for their development. We need to encourage them to play as much as possible because it is more important now than ever. Here are some activities that could be fun ways for them to remain active despite the pandemic. And I must say, because they employ things they can do at home. Here are great exercises for coordination that you can do at home. They include balancing and dribbling and using all sorts of equipment. I encourage everyone to be creative in their efforts to stay active and healthy and use these examples as starting points of things you can encourage your kids if you're a parent, or your students or players if you're a teacher. They can be incorporated into Zoom classroom situations. They can be presented to children as after school activities, something for them to film. I know for my own children, the physical education classroom this year was a lot of self-directed workouts in which they were allowed to think up of ways of exercising and film it and send it in as time lapse. I would love to have seen the time lapse photography or the time lapse videos of all the groups working together over this year. I know my son submits 5 a week, 3 a week, some weeks, depending on the lesson plans. But here you can see great exercises that you can do with siblings, great exercises you can do around the house with different objects, different coordinations. I think Dr. Greco's lessons are important for us. I think they can show us that we can still build on what we've been doing without doing what we've been doing. And I see these slides as important, as I see the next slides. Here we have Dr. Hapkova showing basic footwork patterns and how we can create a simple layout design with 3 objects in our yard and begin to work on and display. And here she does a very basic pattern, but you can increase the complexity and diversity of the activities. You can add a ball to her activities. You can add different aspects of throwing, catching, of coordination to it. This could be one in a line of different activities, you know. Here, I love the jump roping ones. Here you can have 2 siblings together and you know they'll have fun doing this. You know, get them out of the house, get them into the backyard, get them onto the driveway or the sidewalk or the street, as long as it's safe, and have them doing activities that increase their activity level, promote general coordination, and some sports specific aspects. I love these because they're using the ball, they're passing, they're doing different drills. Here we have hopscotch, another great opportunity for us to do. You can change the footwork, you can change the ball usage, you can change what, here he's holding, it looks like a milk carton. I wonder if it's full or empty. Both would have its own problems. Here he's with one arm doing that, and then you switch. So these are all important aspects. And then this last example, you know, improving core strengthening. Here we go, standing up without your hands. This improves core strengthening and coordination in throwing and catching the ball. All of these are exercises our children can do at home, and these are all exercises that we can give to them. Again, these are not complex. They don't take a lot of equipment. Some have sport elements and some don't. But now we're at our end. All that matters to me today is that you get started, adapt, and have fun. Never forget the 5 keys to being successful, and remember our mantra. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. Now let's see what challenge Albertina has in store for us.
So we are going to do this exercise to improve ball reception, and we just need one ball, one small ball. This is size 1, or you can use tennis ball. Whatever you have at home, you can use it. And it's simple. You just throw the ball against the wall and catch with the other hand. You throw with one hand and catch with the other hand.
As a parent of 3 teenage boys, I feel I should add the disclaimer that choose the correct wall for that activity. Remember, the journey is the destination, and you already have what you need to get started. I really appreciate your time and attention, and will now tell you our real world winners and answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. We have received a lot of different answers for these real world problems. The most common problems highlighted were different numbers of students. Some people said they have too few, some people said they have too many. Materials, so people said they don't have enough or they have the wrong sized balls. And access to actual handball courts. And then the other most common thing was the variety and levels within classes. Those were the main things. And we received one answer from Kyriakidom Eli from Greece, who had the highest score of 15.
Oh, he beat me. No, I don't like to lose. I'm too competitive. Well, I think in many ways the too few problem can also be a very big problem, and I felt that. I had classes that were too big, but I had coaching wise, you sometimes start programs out with 3 or 4 players, and you have to be very creative in how you you continually have engagement with them so that they are challenged in their efforts. And that's one of the too few can be a big problem, and I'm very sad that I lost. I thought I had.
That was the main point of this exercise.
Yes, was to win. I want to win everything.
All right, let's move on to some questions then. So this was a bit of a long question, so dear person who submitted this question, I have paraphrased a little bit, but somebody asked, what do you think are the most important elements in encouraging long-term participation in handball? Because a lot of young people stop playing after high school, for example. So what can you do at this stage to help encourage that?
Well, there's 3, so at this stage, so there's 3 distinct exit ramps from handball. The first comes after grade school into the first year of middle school, so around 10 or 11, which is usually because kids go from parent-directed activities to self-directed activities. And then they're like, hey, I don't really like that. And so that's the first one. The second one is always from high school to college, and that's usually because it's just a huge life change. And the third is after college, usually back. It's more of an on-ramp back to handball as they realize what they're missing. With regard to the present symposium and children's handball activities, creating fun and engaging programs is the number one tool for creating lasting programs and for creating lasting interest in the sport with kids. If we create dull, overly rigid programs, we will not have participation numbers we desire, and we'll have a high turnover rate, and we'll always be replacing with new kids who try it and leave for similar reasons to the group before them, which is also heartbreaking. And you have to be honest with yourself as a teacher or a coach on what, at the end of each season, take an inventory of what did I do right, what did I do wrong, where was the most interest, what was the least interest, and kind of shape your program based on how you answer that question.
Okay. Somebody asked, how many teachers or coaches do you think is an ideal number for a novice or beginner's class?
Well, again, it all comes down to size. So I can, so if you notice, so that beginner to that intermediate level with 150 kids takes massive control. Like you have to set up, you can't just show up one day, have the space out there. That takes a kind of a little bit of development. That game was for defense. It was the third week that you saw. So I had already worked through the craziness and retooled. I said, but for novice, it's different. Now you saw like the video that of Dr. Hapkova amongst the children. That's really kind of the limit with young novice beginners, especially in the age of 5 to 7. Anytime you get above 25-to-1 ratio students to players, it becomes tough. It becomes very hard it really becomes hard to keep their focus. They kind of contend for your attention, and when they don't give it, they act out. And so I really feel that ideal is 15 to 20 to 1, but if you're in the 25 to 30 range, you have to be very smart about your activities and how you can control them, because it's hard at the novice level, because it's a lot of cat herding. As kids wander off, you have to keep them in very, very tight. It's easier in a tighter space with young children, because the space alone, the limited space alone keeps them where you need them to be. Where if I walked onto a court that could be split into 3 mini handball games, and if I don't have cones set up, those kids are going to wander all over the court. So from the start. And then we're 10 minutes late to the lesson because it took me to get them that time to get them all back and focused.
Okay, I'm seeing if there's anything related strictly to that. Okay, somebody asked, do you always change the method and variation between every session, or do you repeat some things that you do?
I always repeat activities, but not sequentially. Diversity of activities is important for children, and you can return to a drill or game. Like 10 passes is a common game, or partner tag, that I use often throughout. Sometimes it's, for novice, don't do 10 passes. No one will win. No one will play. You do 4 passes. You make it age appropriate for the object of the game. But it's a simple game that you can easily relate and put out there. And you can use it as a tester game. Where are we in our development as a group? And then use that as a tester game to see, are they able to score now? If they make 10 passes in a row, they put it down on the ground and call out a point, and then they keep their own scores, and each group's doing that. And it might be a game to 3, and the next, as I pointed out, you can advance up the court and play the team that lost from the other court. And so it's this idea that diversity needs to be improved upon, and the progressive nature of drills is awesome. So you can have aspects of it that are similar, but you do something slightly different the next time, even if they haven't mastered it. If it's like a baseline thing, like Dr. Petronevich doing the lateral shot drill, where he first held the hand, and then he tossed them the ball, or handed them the ball, then tossed them the ball, then bounced them the ball. Each time, those don't have to be in succession in a single practice. Those could be done over repeating that drill, or a version of the drill, over the course of a few days, which then provokes, new ways of thinking and creativity for the kids, and allows them to not be bored. Kids don't like to do the same thing twice. Unless and the only difference from that is the basic game form, which means whatever game they can play at that time is something you should repeat every lesson. I rarely go only in maybe if I have a 12 unit or a 12 lesson unit, maybe only twice in that unit will we not play the full court game for whatever court size is demanded.
Okay, we had a couple of questions about this, actually, about how the performance of the children changes based on the surface they're playing on. So you showed us some rule adaptations that you might make for turf or cement, but people have asked about, what do you notice about the technical performance when you change like this?
So in the real world, that's not a question we even need to focus on, because it's going to change. If I don't have court shoes and don't have a well-sealed gymnasium floor, my sidestepping is never going to be the same as if I'm outside on grass or if I'm on asphalt or if I'm on, which I see a lot in videos of sandy play lots in schools being converted into handball space. And so, yes, in reality, it's not ideal or perfect, but this program is created for what's not ideal or perfect. And so, so the most important factors are enjoyment, play, and developing adequately for what you have, not for what you, like I said before, not what you want. We all want better. I wanted from the beginning, I'll confess something right now. I wanted a real handball court and I bought one. And I spent a lot of money and hosted 2 IHF trophy events on it. And I regretted every minute of that want and desire because it took away something that I could have been doing elsewhere because for some reason I wanted a regulation court. I still want a Gere floor. I still want it, but why? Why do I want it? It doesn't help my kids at all, and it doesn't help my program at all. And so, if anything, I've become very focused on providing as much programming as I can and not worrying about having perfect programming. I think the first decade of my career was spent creating perfect programming, and now I want to just do the ideal programming for more, so I can get more kids playing.
Okay, let's finish with one more. And I love this question. How can you encourage kids to be interested in handball in countries where there are other very popular sports? And I know you're a perfect person to answer this.
I am your man. This question, it's a good question to end on. And I'll begin with a preface story. The first time I took a team to Sweden to the Partille Cup, which is, if you don't know, like 5,000 teams with like more kids than you can ever imagine playing on like 15 facilities spaces with 40 courts each. And they interviewed me in the newspaper and they interviewed my children too. And the front page of the sports section in the Gothenburg Post had a headline. I didn't know what it read. So I asked one of my friends who spoke Swedish, said, "What does it say?" And it says, "Finally, we know our coach didn't invent this sport in his basement." And I laugh at that quote because they literally traveled to Europe with me without knowing this was a real sport, like a real one, because it's not in their life and their culture. And one of the things that I do to promote awareness and increase engagement with the sport is to build into my lesson plans the viewing of the sport. There's so much tape on file of YouTube or whatever. Sometimes I give them short clips that they can go over or little printouts of something about the game, but something that really registers that this is official, that this is real. But the difficulty will always be, so I'm in America, the core four are just, they're relentless. You know, the core four: baseball, football, soccer, and hockey. You know, and basketball. So the five, actually, soccer's not even the core four. Soccer, think about how big soccer is around the world, and soccer's still not in our core four. I just said that and I was like, oh wait, I screwed up. And so I'm battling all of those programs, and different countries have different things, issues. In America, we have this industrial complex built up around youth sports, and it's a fierce business. It's billions of dollars competing for the dollars of parents. And if anything, the pandemic has shown us that most of the programs fail, as I said about Game On Sports for Girls, how amazing they are, because they kind of see what's necessary and only give what's necessary. And in my case, and my advice to other people is to continually promote activities outside of the classroom or the coaching space that involves handball watching or viewing, seeing it for players, seeing them understand. But it's also, I'm not going to lie, there is a short bridge across a wide divide when it comes to handball in the developing worlds. And you know what? I built the bridge pretty far. I had to sit there, and every day I sit on the end of my bridge and I attach another couple pieces of steel and I lay some concrete and I go out to the next state. I don't know when I'm not there yet. I'm still an 8 or a 9 on the quiz. I am not there yet. But someday it's gonna be there, and more kids are coming onto the bridge with me, and they now can kind of see the distance shore, and they're like, keep building. And the parents ask me all the time. I mean, my biggest frustration is always that I really can spark parent engagement, which is important for youth sports, but they get frustrated because they want it to be like the core four sports. Why isn't this finished yet? And when you're building something in a new place, that when you're building something that is a representation of something that's super huge somewhere else, but not even known. I mean, I grew up in America and then didn't know handball till I moved to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Never even heard of it. Never watched it in the Olympics, never anything. Never knew about it until I lived in Europe in the 90s. It was like, what is this magical thing I'm seeing? And I got lucky. I was training in a facility that shared time with the French junior national team, and I got to watch them train during one of their camps. And I would go after my practice and go sit there and just stare and be like, this is magic. And that's how I feel. And that's why when Dr. Petronaevich said it, it's magic. And we have to pass the magic to our kids. And that's what's going to keep them going through this kind of, I don't want to use the word difficult. Nothing's perfect, but it helps you go, it keeps you going in the dark. It's like a little light. And we got to carry the light and give it to as many people as possible. And I'll end on that.
Perfect. That was a fantastic quote to end on. Okay, everybody. Thank
Carry
you
the
so
light,
much,
everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Craig. And that brings us to the end of our second to last lecture, unbelievably. And we have our last lecture in the first IHF Children's Handball Symposium coming up this Friday, 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. This is Next Steps in Handball After the Pandemic, a panel discussion featuring Dr. Ilona Hapkova, Dr. Gerard Lasierra, Dr. Nabil Taha Al-Shihab, and Craig will be back with us again on Friday. So we will see you all then. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you again, Craig.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Goodbye, everyone.